Hello, Neale Donald Walsch. How are you doing?
Well, I'm just great. Thank you for asking.
So tomorrow is Global Oneness Day.
Yes, it's very exciting. It's something we've been wanting to do for a long time. I think it's now into its third year, if I have my memory correct. And it's very exciting to me because I think it's the single most important message we could send to the world at this time, and the single most important aspect of our life as human beings on this planet. You know, we've had days set aside on our calendar now for everything that you can imagine. But it's taken all this time for us to set aside a day on the calendar for global oneness. But we've done it. We got the United Nations to go along with us on this and to give us their imprimatur and their okay and their endorsement. And as a result of Global Oneness Day, thousands of people all over the world will be involved in a wonderful experience tomorrow. Or when is it? The 23rd?
24th.
What, 24th?
Yep.
And people all over the world are going to be involved in activities at the local level, on the ground, as well as on the internet globally in their community. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I remember I just did an interview with Barbara Marx Hubbard a while back, and she brought up something pretty interesting, and it's the fact that even doing this right now, by putting this onto the internet, it connects us consciously, and it actually feeds into what Pierre Desjardins would call the noosphere, and it helps the collective consciousness absorb these different thoughts.
Yes, I think it's about, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's about, in fact, creating an environment that is an energetic environment, an environment within the consciousness of humanity. That's exactly correct. Those are the perfect words to use, to create that environment that begins to grow, to expand, to become part of our daily experience of life. The Green Movement has done a really wonderful job of this, and they had. And there's what is the day that they created the global day that the environmental movement created about 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah,
I think it was called Earth Day.
Yeah,
So they created Earth Day, and I think that Earth Day has done a lot to raise the consciousness of people.
right.
Just to raise the awareness. So this is about raising awareness among human beings about our true and right relationship with each other, and by the way, I might add, with God.
You know, there's something I'm sensing different about you than from the last time we met a few years ago.
My hair is white, and the last time my hair was dark.
Yeah, mine's getting a little. Somebody told me that, hey, you know, your hair is turning a little gray, and I said, you know what? I don't care if it turns purple. You know, it's at least I have some hair here.
Yeah.
But there's something. Seriously, I'll be totally honest with you. When I first heard about this guy that talked to God, I had a hesitation of even wanting to go up and talk to you until I read your book. And there was something self-evident about the information in your Conversations with God book, you know? And I realized that I'm projecting an image of a messenger, and I'm forgetting about the message itself. And then when I came up to meet you, you weren't at all what I was expecting. You were a little more down to earth, but now you're even more so down to earth, if you don't mind me saying. There's something I'm sensing more real and genuine about you. Over the years, I guess this is what happens.
Yeah, I think it's called age.
Well, in that case, may we all grow older.
Well, you know, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and honestly, I think the older we get, the more authentic we get, truly. At least that's been my experience, and I observe it in a lot of other people as well. I know we're having an interesting aspect of this conversation right now, but here's something I've noticed. I've noticed that the older people get, especially when they get into their late 60s, their 70s, and their 80s, frankly, they begin to care less and less about appearances, about how it looks, about what other people think, whether they're garnering approval or not. They begin to just, they've been through it, they've gone past a lot of it. What they want to get out of life begins to shift and change, and they begin to say, you know what, this is just what's authentically true for me, and if you like it, terrific. If you don't, that's okay too. I think people do, in fact, become more authentic the older they get.
Right. Yeah, it's and that's a good thing.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's absolutely a good thing, and I wish that I could have done that. And I wish for all people that level of authenticity when they're 25, not when they're 65.
Well, it's looking really good on you, Neil.
Thank you. My father used to say, so old, so soon, so smart, so late.
Yeah. What to do? I just recently wrote a little article, and in the article I was talking about there's all kinds of things happening on the planet. Financial collapse, broken governments, corruption, the environment, global warming. There's so much. But I started wondering, what if we have it all wrong, and what if there's nothing wrong at all? Maybe this is part of a collapsing of this dream as we wake up to a higher reality. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that in many ways what you're saying may be correct. I think that there are some things that are wrong, quote unquote, by the current measure
right.
of what is right and wrong. So by that measure, it would be difficult to argue that there's nothing wrong. It would be difficult to say there's nothing wrong with, for instance, 400 children dying every hour of starvation on this planet. It's difficult to argue that there's nothing wrong with the crime rate in the cities around the world and people getting murdered and raped and whatever, and there's nothing wrong with what's going on in Syria right now and so forth. Difficult to argue that by standard human measurements, there's nothing wrong with life on Earth right now. But even if we use that measure, which is not the measure that I use, and I perceive it's not the measure that you use, but even if we were to use that measure, the commonly held yardstick of humanity about what's right and wrong, what's good and what's not so good, even by that measure, we see that which we measure to be, estimate to be not okay, to be wrong, is really simply a building block to that which is right. As sad as it is that so many children die of starvation, as sad as it is that we have such violence in the world and so forth, we begin to see that these are what our lovely mutual friend Barbara Marx Hubbard would call the birth pangs, the birthing pangs of a new civilization. I agree with Barbara's analogy and the model that she uses of the birthing of humanity. We are, in fact, just at the beginning moments of the time when we birth ourselves as a species into the cosmic community of sentient beings. And given that that's what's happening, all of the steps in that process, including the painful steps I've just described, are in some way perfectly placed to allow the process itself to emerge fully, and to allow humanity, for that matter, to emerge fully into its next grandest expression.
You know how I see you, Neil? I was talking to Bruce Lipton a few months ago, and he was explaining to me about the process of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. And he said something that people don't pay a whole lot of attention to is the middle part where it spins a cocoon. After the caterpillar is practically wiped out its environment, for some unknown reason, it hangs upside down, spins a cocoon. And he says within that cocoon, if you would break it open, it's just a goopy mess. But part of the cells in there, the old structure of the caterpillar, is something called imaginative cells.
Yeah.
And he said that this is what biologists call them, imaginative cells. And they tune in to a hidden frequency, like a sacred emerging reality. And around those imaginative cells, picking up that frequency, is where the butterfly starts emerging.
Yeah.
And I think the imaginative cells in this case are people like yourself, visionaries, and people that are, for whatever reason, can disconnect a little bit from all of the stuff that happens on this planet and tune into a higher reality and translate it in a kind of a way that other people can understand it and start building this new emerging reality.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with that.
Do you think that what we're going through here on planet Earth, do you think we're part of this larger process?
Well, I mean, obviously we are. I'm sorry, it's a leading question. And the answer is, of course we are.
And it's natural.
Of course it is. It's exactly what's going on. There's nothing unnatural about it. All we have to do is understand fully what is happening, why it's happening, and how we can participate in a different way. Let me just share something with you, if I may. My experience and my observation of my own life for the past 67 years, 69 years, but who's counting, has been that for most of those 69 years, I have been going after the wrong thing. And as I look at the rest of humanity around me, my family, my friends, my associates, my acquaintances, and then in the outer circle, just people that I know in the world, I notice that the largest number of those people are doing the exact same thing. That is, we imagine ourselves to be going after one goal, and the truth is, we are really hankering for another goal altogether. And we think that by going after this and by capturing this, we're going to get this. And the irony of it is, it's just the other way around. By going after this and capturing this, we ultimately get this. I asked a question in my most recent published book prior to The Only Thing That Matters. And the book that I published last year was called The Storm Before the Calm. In that book, I asked a question. How is it possible for 7 billion people to all claim they want the same thing and to be unable to get it? How is it possible for the world's population of sentient beings, imagining themselves to be highly evolved sentient beings, to all be striving for the same thing, and to have been, I might add, striving for those things for thousands of years? We didn't just start this in 1956 or 1941 or 1927. We started striving for these things at the dawn of human history. All we want is happiness, health, opportunity, and in today's terms, prosperity, security, love, joy, peace. I mean, our goals are really quite simple. And yet with the simplicity of those goals and the opportunity to achieve them for the largest number of people for thousands of years, we've been unable to do so. Now, how is that possible if we imagine ourselves to be truly an evolved species, that only the tiniest percentage of us have been able to achieve those goals, and even that tiny percentage can only achieve those goals for a small percentage of time? What is it that we're missing here that we don't understand? Is it possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about life, the understanding of which would change everything? And I've looked at that question very closely, and I've asked God for help in understanding. And God said, Neale, it's so simple. Of course, there's a reason why, after thousands of years, you've gotten no closer as a species, perhaps moved further back, actually, from that goal. It could be argued that in our so-called more primitive times, more of us had health, peace, prosperity, safety, security, happiness, and love than have that now. But God said, Neale, the reason is quite simple. You're going after the wrong stuff. You, in fact, are looking for health, peace, prosperity, security, happiness, joy, love. And I said, we're not supposed to be going after that? He said, no. Neale, those are fallout effects. Those are things that occur automatically when you go after what's here. And when you succeed in grasping and attaining what's here, then all those things you've been going after here, health, safety, peace, prosperity, security, and all the rest, that will come to you automatically. And then God said to me, I sent someone down there a few years ago who put it perfectly. He said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you. So God said, if you make this the goal and the objective of your life, that is the kingdom of God, and live into that, that is, allow yourself to notice that this is really the only thing that matters, that you would express and experience, become and fulfill the highest expression of divinity of which you are capable in any given moment. And notice that I, through the intervention of your own soul, will create the right and perfect circumstances, situations, and events, perfectly designed to place before you the stage upon which you can build your next grandest experience of the greatest idea you ever held about who you truly are. That is, your next most extraordinary idea of what divinity really is. And when we recontextualize our life in that way, and use our life for that purpose, all this stuff over here rains down upon us like snowflakes. They just fall without us having to reach for them. And I'll conclude my little mini speech here. I didn't mean to give a lecture, but this is something that I'm so passionate about in these last days of my life, these last years, to be able to share with as many people as possible that since I have changed my life and gone after this stuff over here, and I haven't attained it, I'm not saying for a minute that I've achieved that, but that's been my goal, that's been my mission, that's been my objective over here. Since I've made this my objective and gotten there once in a while and achieved it every so often, these things over here have in fact rained down upon me. I'm living the perfect life. I've got the perfect relationship with a wonderful, wonderful woman in my life. I make all the income I could possibly ever have imagined that I might make. My life work provides me with such fulfillment that I can't believe it. I live in a beautiful home on a beautiful hill. I drive a nice little Prius, with which I'm perfectly happy. There's a plug for the Prius people over at Toyota. And everything I even have a great dog. I mean, everything in my life really is exactly the way I would have had it when I was trying to put those building blocks into place one at a time. I don't have to put those building blocks into place one at a time. They're automatically placed there for me by life when I pay attention to this over here. I'm done.
Yeah, and what you're saying is so important, Neale, because I don't think we can ever figure it out. Like Einstein said, we're never going to come up with the solutions from the same level that created the problems.
Hello.
Yeah, I think we do have to reach beyond the language, beyond the thought processes to go into that moment of presence. You know, I really liked watching you were interviewing with Eckhart Tolle, and you had some personal honesty there that really hit me strong, and I want to thank you for it because it allowed me to see some of my stuff, you know, and just constantly catch myself, like right now, pulling myself into presence. So I'm not interviewing an author. I'm being to being. I'm being here right now with you. And from this presence and this moment comes exactly what needs to be said.
That's how it works. That's my understanding of exactly how it works. It's all going on right here, right now. I loved the time I spent with Eckhart. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Very sweet man.
Yep.
And he's fun to be around. Fun to call friend. Fun to be around.
Yeah, I bet. Yep.
But yeah, that's what and not only being totally present in this moment, not only getting that it is really about the power of now and being totally present in this moment, excuse me, but by coming, at least in my case, for me, by coming to a place of great clarity about what this moment was designed to allow me to express and to experience. So it's about not only being present, but being aware of the opportunity that this moment, in its unique presentation, the way it's coming at me right now, the lights, the sounds, the temperature in the room, the people who walk by, everything that's going on, the entire event has been designed through me, for me, by me, in collaboration with all the other souls involved, including those who are watching this. This entire experience has been collaboratively created to present the right and perfect circumstance, allowing me to experience the aspect of divinity that my soul is choosing to call forth now. Once again, to repeat myself, when I pay attention to that and use my presence in this moment for that purpose, all the other stuff that I was reaching for, striving for, searching for, yearning for, come to me automatically. It's an amazing thing.
Sounds like it's the only thing that matters.
It is, in fact, and that is why I wrote that book. And thank you for that lead-in, because you know I sat down and I realized a few months ago when I began writing that book, you know, I have one final thing I want to say. There will be probably other books that I'll write. It'll be spin-off books or further explanations of things. But there's only one more new thing that I want to say. And that is, you know, what is the only thing that matters? I found myself going around talking about that when I was visiting people, when I was doing lectures around the place and so forth, I found myself saying, for all that's been written, not only by me in the Conversations with God books, but all the other teachers, all the other authors throughout human history, for that matter. We're not talking about a small number of books or a small chunk of literature. We're talking about an enormous amount of literature here. And for all that's been written and all that's been said, here we are still in the year 2012, unable, as I mentioned a minute ago, to produce the outcome for which we say we all yearn, and to produce that outcome for the largest number of us. That's incomprehensible to me, how it would be possible, unless there's something we don't know here, we don't fully understand. That's why I wrote The Only Thing That Matters, because I said, okay, that really is the only thing that matters. Everything else is irrelevant.
Well, it seems like we have so many of our basic precepts wrong. And there's one of the things you said in the book was about our basic instinct being that of survival, but it's really not that. It's something else.
That's right.
We've had this stuff embedded into us to the point to where we start believing it and making decisions based upon untrue statements. So how could it possibly lead us to a better place? Because then if we're fighting for survival, we're coming from a place of individuality and defense and offense, aggression, and this bleeds over into nationalism and wars and everything else that we're experiencing. So what do you think our basic instinct is?
Well, you're perfectly correct in assessing that it is not survival, and you're perfectly correct in assessing that humanity has been told that our basic instinct is survival from the beginning of time. So we think we are supposed to follow the so-called survival instinct. But when we step into our understanding of and our highest clarity around the truth of life, which is that it never ends, and that we cannot die if we tried to. We will exist forever and forever, even forevermore. When we understand that, then we go, well, now wait a minute. If that's true, then survival is not the question. That's not the issue. The issue, if we live forever and even forevermore, the issue is, what are we doing with the forevermore? That we see then that this particular incarnation is not the only experience of life we're going to have, or that we have had up till now. We begin to change our perspective on the whole of the life experience itself. And we begin to say, okay, then survival is not the basic instinct, then what is? And God said to me, the basic instinct of humanity is the expression of divinity. And let me give you a striking example of that to prove the point. Because people might say, Neale, the basic instinct of humanity is the expression of divinity. Give me a break. I sound like Archie Bunker. Edith, stifle it. I mean, give me a break. Because it sounds so squishy soft. It's right. The basic instinct of humanity is the expression of divinity. Wow. But in fact, it's true, and I've got proof of it. A man is walking down the street. He looks up at a building that suddenly bursts into flames. There's been an oven explosion or some kind of explosion in the house. The house is suddenly on fire just that fast. He hears somebody crying, help, help. Some mother is holding her baby out the window on the second floor. Please help, catch my child, save us. Now, if that man's basic instinct was survival, the last thing he would do is run into that house. Believe it. That's the last thing that survival would call upon him to do. But in fact, he runs into the house, through the flames, right, up the stairs, to the second floor, and helps those people out, throws his coat over them so they are not impacted by the smoke and flame as much, gets them outside, saves their life, may even trip and fall as he pushes them through the front door and die himself, for all we know, in the flames. Or he may escape as well with them. But his fundamental instinct, his first impulse, is to get in there and save that life. That's what divinity would do.
Right.
There was a guy in New York City, I'm sure you know the story, a few years ago, who in fact faced a situation similar to that, where he was standing on a platform at the subway station in New York with many other people. There were several hundred people waiting for the subway train to come in, and a little girl fell off the platform. And she fell, just a short fall, 2.5, 3 feet. She wasn't hurt by the fall so much, but she fell onto the train and, of course, onto the tracks, and she couldn't get back up because it was just too high for her to reach. Her mother didn't know what to do. The guy just jumped down because they began to hear the train coming. They could hear the train right around the bend, and they were, oh my God, save her! He jumped down, pushed her down in the hollow underneath the two tracks, the two rails, put his body on top of hers, got down as far as he could, knowing that when that train came in, it was just seconds that it was going to happen, that when that train came over them, he was probably going to die. But with any luck, she would not. As it happened, he did not die either. The train came to a screeching halt on the other side of them. He just had some light injuries onto his back and the top of his head, but he survived. He pulled her out of that muddy ditch, but she was none the worse for the wear. What person, if their basic instinct was survival, would put themselves in harm's way like that? But if your basic instinct is divinity, you're no longer concerned with your own survival. And that's the difference.
And this brings up a really good point, Neale, because the person that did that, the person that rushed into the fire, that person could have also been a person that went and joined the armed forces, went overseas, and was part of a group of people that killed lots of people. But I think if we act out of impulse, not out of nationalism or religious beliefs or well thought out plans, I think our first impulse is a divine impulse. But our ego gets involved and we start thinking, and we can actually do things. That same individual can do things that he will turn right around and do the opposite if it's a divine impulse. And this brings up the fact, what is that? What is that gets in the way of our divinity? And I think it's our personality, our ego personality, our constructs that gets out there and gets really defensive and aggressive, trying to survive and protect itself.
Well, of course, it's the mind's job to make sure you survive long enough to accomplish the agenda of your soul. So the mind's only function, when all is said and done, at the end of the day, is to feed you data that allows your body to respond in such a way that you survive. And that's the mind's only function. We might think the mind has other functions, but the mind has a simple function. Gather all the data you can get, file it according to category, call it forward instantly in the moment that any new event occurs, analyze the new event against the data you've already filed away, and then tell the body what to do in order to stay alive. Really quite simple. And not only to stay alive physically, but also how to stay alive mentally. That is, how to save yourself from whatever psychological or philosophical danger there may be in the space. That is, what is the best thing to say right now so this person doesn't become angry? It's all the same thing. It's about survival. So the mind's job is to feed you data that will allow you to make the right decision according to its measurement of what is right, so that you can do the thing called survive. If survival is not the issue, if that's taken off the table, the decisions you would reach, just as you pointed out, would be entirely different in some cases. Entirely different. Probably in many cases.
So what do we do to, in a Heinleinian sense, grok what you are saying, and to where it becomes not just a cliche or a statement? Because you and I both know we have heard some really wise sayings in our lives, but it stayed on a mental level. What can we do to help the 2% become a critical mass, to bleed over into the collective consciousness, to really make this a global reality?
I wish I had an easy answer for that.
I wish you did too.
The only answer I can give you is what has begun to work for me. And it's not even working all the time, but it's beginning to work. I think first we create a pathway to the soul That is, we give ourselves a living experience of the soul's presence in our life. Most people who would know us, who would know you and me and our work and so forth, would probably be in the category of people who acknowledge that they have a soul. Yes, do you believe in the soul? Yes, I believe in the soul. But my experience has been that most people, even those who believe that they have a soul, are not clear what the soul's function actually is, what it does, how it works, least of all, how to get in touch with it on a regular basis. I don't mean, spontaneously here and there, I have a soul experience, but I mean on a regular basis, to use a modern computer phrase, on demand. I'm going to get soulondemand.com. So how to get to the soul on demand? The answer to your question for me is not a simple answer, but it's a kind of a 2 or 3 phase answer. Number one, learn. For me, it's been about how I can learn how to get to my soul on demand. That I can, at will, whenever I want to, make a connection with my soul. Secondly, how to not then have my mind talk me out of what my soul is telling me. So step 2 for me is to shut off my mind when I'm listening to my soul, because chances are, more often than not always, but more often than not, chances are the information I'm getting from my soul will be directly opposite to what my mind is telling me. So I need to turn off my mind and stop my mind from negating or dismissing out of hand the information that's coming from my soul. Step 3 for me is to then act. Act on what my soul is advising me, telling me, and recommending to me that I do and that I be. Act on that immediately, at once, without hesitation. Now, and then step into the full expression of that. Now, for me, that process takes practice. So while I can't give you a simple answer, I can give you what has worked for me. Over and over and over again, I engage that 3-step process at every one of the important moments of my life. And I can tell when an important moment is coming or when it's happening, usually after it's starting to occur, but I can go, uh-oh, this is not a small moment here. And by the way, important moments are not like when I got married or when I got my first job. I'm not talking about those kinds of important moments, because in that category, we have probably 6 or 8 in our entire life. But important moments, I mean moments that give us the fullest opportunity to express the grandest idea we ever had about the greatest notion of who we really are. And you can begin to recognize those moments. Sometimes they're in the middle of a small argument or a quibble you're having with your loved one. Sometimes they're in the middle of a chance encounter with a person on the street. They're not always negative, by the way, moments. They're sometimes very positive moments. Sometimes they're just, a wonderful conversation you happen to be having spontaneously with somebody at the supermarket, somebody you just happened to walk into, or they asked you a question. And you realize, no, wait a minute, this is not just a casual encounter. All of life has been designed for a particular purpose. There's something more here than meets the eye. So, my friend, my long-winded answer to your very short question is, for me, it's about practicing the notion that there's more here than meets the eye in most of the moments of my life, and looking, therefore, at those moments, looking not past them, not through them, but deeply into them, to see what is here for me as an opportunity to share with you and everyone else that I'm touching the grandest notion of the greatest idea I ever held about who I am. If this moment were designed for me to express some aspect of divinity, what would that aspect be now? Or, as I put it in my book, there's a magic question I put in the book, The Only Thing That Matters. And that's been my practice, if you will. Buddhists have their practice. Catholics have their practice. Republicans have their practice. And I have my practice. And my practice is a single question. I ask myself in the midst of any moment that I can pay attention to, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? I ask myself that in the supermarket. When some lady runs into me with her shopping cart, crash, and I turn around and I look at her and immediately I ask, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? I walk out of the supermarket 20 minutes later and there's some person standing there asking for some coins or a few pieces of folding money because he has nothing at all. And he's asking people who are coming out of the store, maybe could you share some change? And I ask myself, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? I pull out of the parking lot of that store and some guy almost cuts me off. It's some crazy driver. My God, can't you see me here? Zing! Just missed me by that much. And I ask myself, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And that is the question that I place before the house in many, many, many of the moments of my life. And it's begun to shift my ground of being as I move through those moments and to create a different kind of me than I have been used to experiencing heretofore. That's a long answer to a short question. Sorry about it.
Have you sort of found out that the answers that come back to you are more heartfelt answers than mind-based answers?
Inevitably, without any doubt, the answers that come back, because I've framed the question in such a way that it almost precludes the possibility of receiving some sort of a mental construction.
Right.
Mental constructions are avoided. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? Well, first of all, before I could answer the question, I would have to know what the agenda of my soul is. I'd have to be very clear about that. In my case, I have become very clear about that. Since that's a point of clarity for me, I don't have to go back before the question to ask the preceding question. What is the agenda of my soul? I already know the answer to that for me. So since that question has been answered to my own satisfaction, I now have my own measuring stick, my own yardstick to use, against which I can measure my response to the present experience. So I ask myself the question, okay, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? This interview we're having right now, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? Everything. But if the answer comes back nothing or very little, I stop doing what I'm doing, or I stop the way in which I'm doing it.
Right. And that comes as a feeling, as a uneasiness, sort of a discontent with the moment. And when I feel that, I do it too. That's my trigger. That's one of my triggers to bring myself into presence. That uneasiness and synchronicities too. When I feel a synchronicity, it automatically triggers me to be present, because I know that there's something about this moment that's important to pay attention.
There you are.
Yeah. Well, Neale, is there anything else you'd like to say about your new book?
No, but if I don't see it on that shelf behind you of all those other books you've never read.
You will. I think I've read almost all of your books.
Well, yeah, but please don't tell me that you've read all those books behind you on that shelf, because if you have, I'm going to be incredibly envious and very, very upset with myself that I haven't done the same thing. I've read about 1/3 of that many. I love the way you have those books stacked up behind you.
Yeah,
is that your library? Look at that.
It's part of it. I have 4 more bookcases like that. Full. But I get lots of books to review, so I'm always reading books to review them in the magazine too. So
that's great. That's great. Well, yes, thank you very much. No, I have nothing more to say except I hope that people will find it, enjoy it, and allow themselves to get more connected to and familiar with the only thing that matters. The one thing we didn't say here that I would probably add here at the end is the opening line of the book. The very first paragraph of the book says 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. When we understand that, we've understood all we really need to understand about life and how to make it more fulfilling, more enriching than it ever was before. And then it's just a matter of what we do about that. But I've decided to stop spending 98% of my time on stuff that just doesn't matter.
Right. Well, this conversation mattered a lot to me, and I appreciate your time, Neale.
And to me as well. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. You take care of yourself, and maybe the next time we're in Ashland, we'll try to look you up.
Terrific. That would be wonderful. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too.